And welcome back to part 8 of SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, where today we're exploring Kelp Forest. Yes, that Kelp Forest, the one that's kind of every kid who grew up with this game's hated level. But they've made it a lot better. It's still kind of odd, it's still kind of a bit funky and has a few moments that I'm not really keen on, but they've done a lot to help bring it to life. And I think the biggest thing that helps is that it's a lot brighter than it was originally, which is a good thing, despite it's supposed to be like a more evening-like level, because there's a theming of this game that you might have noticed. When the game started, SpongeBob woke up, and the last level is SpongeBob's dream. If you pay attention to the sky, in every level, it will go from morning to midday to evening to night. So now we're in the third act. Kelp Forest is in the evening, Graveyard is in the night, and then SpongeBob Dream is going to sleep for the night. Like, do you see, like, that's how they do it. It's actually a kind of subtle thing that you can miss. It's really clever. But we got the cruise bubble. You tap L1, you launch the baby forward. It used to be R1, but because R1's also the talk command, they wisened up and thought, well, no, let's make it a separate button so you don't accidentally try and talk to someone when you're trying to cruise bubble. If you can get on top of the Krusty Krab sign over here as well, you can get your 6th and final piece of health, so you're fully extended and ready to go. Entering the Krusty Krab itself is one of the harder challenges on your first playthrough. If you're not that good at the combat or just staying out of harm's way, there might be trouble. There's a sock in that dumpster behind the Krusty Krab, but I wonder, there's another nitpicky criticism. In the original, you whacked it, the dumpster moved, and there was a sock hidden underneath it. Whilst now you hit it, and it just pops on it. And I just feel like that didn't look as good to me. That didn't look as effective. But anyway, you talk to Mr. Krabs over here. The shiny object purchasing will be put on temporary hold because he'll want you to go and clear out the Krusty Krab and destroy all the robots. There's also a stock in the Krusty Krab if you destroy absolutely everything, so of course we'll be doing that as well as we go in.
I feel like I should be working.
I've never really had a consistent way of doing this. Ideally, those Thunder Tikis sitting on top of the... Oh, goddammit, this fucker respawn. I forgot there's a Duplicatortron in here. So they're just going to keep on respawning those fucks. Ow. Ow, damn it. Ow. Right, let's nab this.
I feel like a new spot.
And get this Duplicatortron.
There's nothing like the smell of salt.
Oh, its corpse got in the way of my bubble bowl. Oh no, it's a wooden plank that's getting in the way. Alright, I'll just whack it. I'll stop trying to bubble bowl it.
Fresh like a spring breeze.
Oh yeah, there's the Bzzbots, or the laser enemies. They've been nerfed from the original. In the original, their laser had 2 colours, preparing and in pain zone. Whilst now they have 3 colours, where they have a startup, preparing, and then it's pain zone. They do that so you have more time to actually spot them and react to them and kill them before they're hazardous. In the original, you had to stand on this to knock them, whilst in this, you have to kind of stand next to them because it just counts it as a physical object that reacts to you hitting it. Where it's not as detailed as it was in the original in terms of you had to actually smash both bottles. You also need to open the cash register, so make sure you do that as well if you want this sock. Absolutely everything here has to break and be interacted with for the sock to appear. There's every chair, every wooden piece. So all of this over here. There's physics on the objects now in Rehydrated. So if you break the bottom one, the top one might go somewhere you're not expecting it. So be wary. And the last thing you're probably missing is on the border, that Thunder Tiki over there. If you make sure it's the last thing to destroy, you're travelling the least amount to get that sock. Also, the music just reset there because the cutscene ended. And yay! Now let's get out of here. Get our spatula for Mr. Krabs. And it's only one more spatula in actual main Bikini Bottom. And it's in the entrance hall of the Chum Bucket Lab. You can't go into the Chum Bucket Lab properly until you have 75 golden spatulas. But you can go into the entrance hall and kind of look around. Additionally, there's a TV report you can get there. There's one we missed. If you interact with the TV in the Murmur Lair, I just forgot about it because I almost never do it. You can find out the news has caught on to Plankton. So this news is absolutely certifying that yes, they do know it's Plankton that's done it now. SpongeBob doesn't have to tell anyone. And also, I like the newscasters. Like, yes, right where you're standing. Like, how do you know I'm here? What? Is this a news broadcast? Wouldn't it be on any TV?
Has denied any involvement. And then stop on your children. And stop on your children's children. This has been a Bikini Bottom news flash.
I like how all the chairs in this most detestable, terrible food, a loveless restaurant is fun to Tiki. So I can't find that kind of funny. But your last Bikini Bottom based bachelor's up here. The last thing left to really show off is the theatre, which is 40,000 shiny objects to get into, and I'm warning you right now, not worth it. Not worth it at all. It was barely worth it in the original because it gave you access to a concept art gallery, but the amount of grinding you had to do to get 40,000 spare made it difficult to justify. But in this, you don't even really get concept art. You get art you can see elsewhere in the game. And so it feels really wasted. Like, it feels like they just tacked it on and forgot about it. But let's actually go into the main meat of the video, Kelp Forest.
In the Kelp Forest, an interesting area with many sights to see, for those that don't get hopelessly lost first.
And welcome to your first Act 3. Oh my god, did you see that lag spike? I hope that came through on the recording. The game just stopped for a second. Be wary of that leaf. You get near it, the thing slaps you. It just bitch slaps you without caring the world. It's kind of funny, actually. I might go back and show it later on. But this is your first Act 3 level, and you'll notice straight away that there is an increase in difficulty, quite significantly. All 3 of the Act 3 levels can kick your backside if you're not prepared. If you race to get up here, there is a sock up here, which is another one of the very last socks I had left to get on my very first playthrough, because I just didn't think to climb them. One that I did find on my blind playthrough though, because even as a 5-year-old, I was like, huh, that's lined up. Maybe I should try and see if I can hit them all in one bubble bowl. Which is what you have to do for the sock. All these sleepy tikis, you need to break them in one bubble bowl. And it will give you a sock. It's a teeny tiny bit more forgiving in Rehydrated, but I think it's a glitch. Because on my first playthrough, I got all but the last one, and I just, for the sake of it, just threw another bubble bowl at it and hit the last one, and it gave me the sock anyway. So I think it does have a little bit of room of negotiation. Like, if you get most of them, it will be a bit more forgiving about it. But anyway, going over here, once again, Mrs. Puff will give you a collectathon-based objective. First it was the wheels, then it was the museum art, and now it's lost kids. Oh no, she gave us a lot of, like, trapped kids on balloons in Goo Lagoon as well. So this is our 4th time that she's given us a numbered collectible. She is the numbered collectible person. But the quote-unquote campers that are around the forest, you need to try and find all of them. I don't know why SpongeBob was holding the bubble wand out in this scene. Like, I noticed it in my blind playthrough, and he's done it again here, and I'm like, what's the point? Also, if you go to the porta head, it is a porta potty, so if you just stand in it, it will, yeah, do a sound effect, and that's, yeah, just a little thing. They actually make the porta heads your way of changing character in the movie game, instead of the bus stops. That you just go to the loo, and then the other character comes out. But Kelp Forest is the level, as I mentioned earlier, is the one that is kind of infamous for kids. It's not that bad now you're older. Like, if you play it nowadays, it really isn't too difficult. The second section is drastically overhated. Like, once you know what to do, it really isn't as bad as a lot of people have you believe. Which I think is a shame, because I actually kind of like this section once you know what you're doing. But I can agree it has the problem of if you don't know what you're doing, it feels kind of thrown about the place. And the reason why I bring it up is because I'm seeing, like, people who've never played this game before, or only played the original once or twice. I was too busy talking, so I just kind of just missed that jump. Like, I see a lot of people just get to the second section, not do it properly. Okay, what the fuck? I just got robbed there. That's how you're supposed to deal with them, but it just didn't work. And then, like, say they don't like it, so, oh, it's bad, they don't like it. I'm like, well, it is good, it's just kind of poorly made. Like, I can admit it's poorly made and it's got problems with it, but if you pay enough attention, it's not that bad. I'll always be kind of defensive about that section. And if you've been watching all of this so far, you know I'm not the sort of person to get overly defensive on something, regardless of how much I love it. Like, I really, really love this game, but I've been, especially the boss fights, I've been criticizing the hell out of it because I love it. The very reason why I criticize it is because I love it. Also, this whole section you're supposed to do as Patrick up there, I just skipped it. You don't have to do it at all. You can just make the jump as Spongebob. But yeah, like, the second section of Kelp Forest, like the third and fourth section, the problems people have with them, I can understand. Because the third section, especially on the original PS2, was pitch black. If you had an original PS2, or the original GameCube and Xbox, and you had like a TV, the sort of TV you'd have at the time, you know, not the flat screens that were spoiled with today, like an old school box TV, like I had, you were screwed. Any daylight that got into your room at all, you weren't seeing the screen. That was just the end of it. And so the Kelp Caves, the third section of this, I 100% understand the criticisms against it. Even in Rehydrated, now it's a lot brighter, it's still very maze-like and very confusing, and it's one of the only challenges that can be quite frustrating, especially if you're a kid. You know, the intended audience for this. And the Kelp Slide is just the ultimate slide-based challenge, the fourth and final section of this. There is a slide-based challenge that's supposed to be far longer, and technically it's the last one you're supposed to do, but the one in Kelp Forest is always the real meat of the challenge, is always the real difficult one. But I should get back on topic. There's our third and last camper of this first section. There's 2 in the second section, and the last one is in the third section. There are none in the last section of this map. But this button, you're supposed to hit it with the fruit as Patrick, but, you know, you can just punch it. Which is how you're supposed to get Patrick up there in the first place to do the thing that I just jumped across as Spongebob, jumping off a stone Tiki. That being said, though, we do need Patrick for one thing. So I'm going to quickly nab him back down under here before we move on. And we're going to need him for the second section anyway, so we might as well. And enjoy it, because if you're following along, this is like the last time you'll be using Patrick. I'm not kidding. Sandy is the choice for the next level, because the way it works is it alternates, as I've mentioned it before. Like, it always goes Patrick, Sandy, Patrick, Sandy, Patrick, Sandy. But the alternation is sort of broken because of SpongeBob's Dream. SpongeBob's Dream, I've always had the hunch, and every time I see like things that like never left the cutting room floor, they wanted SpongeBob's Dream to actually involve all 3 characters. Because in SpongeBob's Dream, you go to Sandy's Dream, and in that you play as Sandy. But then later on, you go into Patrick's Dream, and there's nothing there. But when you look at data files, there's originally going to be a huge platforming challenge of like giant fruits, giant cakes, and chocolate, and things like that. And some of the objects have tremendous space between them, where you probably would have had to use like the throwing fruits. Like, they were going to have a really big designated challenge for Patrick that just didn't make it. So SpongeBob's Dream feels weird, and it's the only thing I would have welcomed as a change in Rehydrated. It's literally the only main change to the actual main campaign I would have appreciated if they actually went back and re-added Patrick's level. When they announced this game, they said that old cut content would be coming back in this game. What they didn't say is how, which is something I'll get to after this load screen, so I don't want to interrupt myself. What they did is that everything that was remotely associated with the cut content, they instead put into an optional new mode that was added to this game, an extra Horde mode. So the robot Squidward boss fight that was added to this game is only playable through the Horde mode, which is alright. Like, I suppose I'll do a video to cover it. Probably not straight away, because if I want to cover it, I want to try and cover it with someone, because it can be done co-op, and of course with everything going on, local is out of the question, which is how I prefer to do it, because I can be more casual. So it's very much a let's just see what happens. Maybe I can convince Callum, because I know he's got an interest in playing this game. If I can convince him to get it, we can do online. But I don't want to just record it on my own sort of things. I feel like that's defeating the point of why it's there. But anyway, this challenge, there's only 3 stone tikis in this section. You need to find all 3 and put them on these buttons. This is the section I was on about earlier, where I said people kind of don't really learn what you're supposed to do and usually cheat it out. They usually cheat it out and say, oh, nah, it's not that good, or nah, I couldn't see what you're supposed to do. And it's like, even like, and this is not me throwing any disrespect, I adored Some Call Me Johnny as a person. I think he's an amazing person, but he too has even struggled in this section, because he only showed off like a little bit of footage of like editing thoughts whilst he was doing it, which I always love seeing, like a bit of background. He to get the second Tiki, just tried to skip the ledge. Like, he managed to just barely do it, and he just completely skipped the ledge. Admittedly, the game immediately afterwards glitched out because the stone tiki broke, which I thought was just like, huh, okay. But I kind of was like, okay, sure. Like, it's a bit finicky glitch, like with some technical problems. Which, thankfully, touch wood, I haven't encountered myself. But it's the fact that he didn't, like, go out of his way to find the switch, even though if you're going for 100%, you have to run past the switch to get the sock that's in this section. So you really can't miss it. This is a bit annoying, though. As in, I know I might be just sounding, like, really defensive on it, but this is, like, the only section in the game I feel that way about. Like, I always feel like people dog on this, on the second section of Kelp Forest way too much, when in reality it's perfectly fine. It expects you to think a little bit more, and which I know, like, a lot of this game is pretty mindless. Like, I mean, I've been talking and playing without much trouble, despite it being live and being the first one I've done it in a while, because this game is pretty mindless to me. But the reason why it's become like that is because I put several thousand hours into the original, so I know it better than I know my own skin. But it still doesn't change the fact that this section, you are expected to kind of pay attention a little bit more, see where everything is, notice that there is a bouncy leaf, which is what those golden coloured ones are, that is positioned in an odd spot on its own, but you already know from the first section that there's certain buttons that will raise them up. And then when you're bouncing across here, even as a kid, I noticed that this one coming up bounces you oddly high compared to the others. So you're going to start turning around and notice that there's an alternate platform over here. Then you're going to start seeing the string of path along the top across here. And ignoring the G-Love, you're over here in no time flat. And there's the button I was on about that opens the path to get you that second Tiki there. Like, to me, I don't see where the problem is. Because now that's raised up, you can get that stone Tiki there, no problem. And if you follow it along a little bit more, there's an extra sock for your troll. As I said, if you're going for 100%, you're going to bump into that button, but on your way to this sock. The only thing that kind of sucks is that you can't alter the camera for some reason in Rehydrated. I'm pretty sure it's a glitch that they're going to address, but they've got this system with smart camera, regardless of whether you turn it on and off, where you can't move the camera the moment you start bouncing on any bounce pad. It's fixed in place. You just can't alter the camera whatsoever. So you always see me, before I go to one of the touchpads, alter my camera beforehand so I can have it the way I want it to be. But that's how you're supposed to do it. And then you throw it on that rock and you're good to go. And because this is all set up, we can just go back the way we came, no problem. But that's it. And in some point we skipped it, and Ray Navarez Jr., who's a Twitch streamer who I always go out my way to watch, when he went through it, he didn't do the challenge full stop. He got the Tiki that you start with, the Tiki at the end, because it's actually the other one that's very easy to find. It's just given to you for reaching the end of this section. Stacked them on top of each other, jumped off them to get up, which you could do in the original as well. But it's like, not like, people aren't prepared to actually learn how to do this section. I always kind of find it a little disappointing, like, because it's like, this is a fun section, you just gotta learn it. But I gotta stop going on, because I'm just gonna end up annoying people. I sound like I'm bitching and moaning too much. The two campers that are in this section, there's 2 points where the path splits. You just go down the right hand side. Additionally, something that's interesting is that you had to pay for both left hand splits, whilst now you only have to pay for one of them, so they were kind of aware that it was a bit redundant to have you buy so much, so they got rid of it. They also unlock a bungee hook, which is the only bungee hook in the game that is 110% completely optional. There isn't a sock or spatula tied to it. You're only getting it for extra shinies. Which makes me wonder if they originally were going to put a sock there, because there's a few socks in the game, as I've mentioned before, that feel like it's just kind of given to you. So it makes me wonder if at some point maybe they were going to put a sock there, but later on, just because in the original game that Heavy Iron made, late game was kind of tight in time schedule. They had to make a lot of sharp turns and cut content to get everything where they needed to be to reach deadlines. It's nowhere near as rushed as the Rehydrated is in comparison, but it was rushed. Like Spongebob Battle for Bikini Bottom, both versions for its entire lives, they've had to have an uphill battle, which is probably one of the main other reasons why I kind of want a direct sequel at some point, because I want to actually see a game that isn't tied to some kind of deadline. The original was just, at the time, they wanted a new SpongeBob game out to try and recover from the reputation, because Revenge of the Flying Dutchman, as much as I liked it, wasn't received well, and a lot of people really didn't like it. and the movie game that came afterwards had to be ready for the movie. This had to be out before the new SpongeBob film, you know, the one that has Keanu Reeves in it, which I've no real interest in watching, because the actual SpongeBob show, outside the first 3 seasons in the original film, I haven't really watched much of since. Like, I've seen like the odd specials. Like, I've seen the one where it's like we go back into SpongeBob's ancestry and we see him in his cowboy days. I've seen Atlantis SquarePants begrudgingly. I'm not a big fan of that one, and I've seen Truth or Square. But other than that, that's like the end of my SpongeBob watching experience. I've still got the first 3 seasons on DVD that I like going back to every now and then, and that's all I need. But that's the whole section. That's literally it. And then next is the section that is actually justifiable of a lot of the criticism it gets: the caves, which is a lot brighter than it used to be because they've got holes in the roof of the cave letting natural light get in, and they have the lanterns glow a bit more than they used to. But this area used to be pitch goddamn black in the original.
Sure, Barnacle Boy, what do you need?
But we got a challenge from Barnacle Boy. There's power crystals around the cave. If you find all of them, bring them back to him. He will reward you.
Secret superhero power?
There's also another spatula for just getting to the other end of it. So essentially all they want you to do is just explore the whole cave before you finish. But like I said in the original, good luck. This section is dark.
Well, then you rest those super bones of yours.
If you know where everything is, it's not too bad. But if it's your first playthrough, and if you played it way back in 2003, and where, you know, we didn't have screens with as brightness levels as we do now, yeah, this area sucked. Any natural daylight came in, you weren't seeing the screen. Bonk. But the first section of the cave is about positioning. You need to set things up so that SpongeBob can go in, use the cruise bubble, the hit buttons to open following doors. It's why there's a bus stop just chilling right at the start of here, because you're going to be alternating between them regularly. Through this stone tiki, you can throw it here. But whilst we're doing this section, I'm going to go back to the conversation I was talking about, because I know I'm rambling a lot more, but forgive me, I'm playing it live for the first time. Playing a game recording live for the first time in quite a while, I'm having to kind of collect my thoughts as I play. And I'm also having to focus on what I'm doing when it's things like the cave, just because I know it can be a bit more confusing, and I don't want to do it all, and then you guys be like, wait, what did he just do? And just be confused at what I did, sort of thing, because this area can be quite confusing if you get lost. But like I said, because both the original got rushed due to just general time constraints, and Rehydrated got rushed because it had to be out before the film, it always feels like it's been an uphill battle. So I want there to be a direct battle for Bikini Bottom 2 when nothing else is going on with SpongeBob. Like, we can just have a game. Fucking, I'm sorry, the cruise bubble. Let me finish my point actually before I talk about the cruise bubble. So I want there to be a battle for Bikini Bottom 2, so that there's no deadlines, no other things, and then the purple lamp, or if assuming they get brought back, I hope they do, can just be left to crack on, to not have to worry about deadlines and having to put a game together in 11 months, which is what they did with this, to just be able to make it and enjoy it and give us a fresh new experience with new levels. Like, I'd love to go check out Glove World as a level. I'd love to go check out Atlantis. I think what would actually be a really cool nod to have Atlantis be a level, and just have it be one of the bigger levels where you get to explore all the different areas, you get to go see the old bubble, you get to see all these little things and trinkets and secrets. Like, you get to explore the grounds outside, go inside and see the factories with the tanks and such. If they made that a full level, and like you'd have to, I think it'd be the downtown equivalent. Like, I think it'd have to be kind of non-linear in structure, but I think making Atlantis a level in a Battle for Bikini Bottom 2 would be amazing. But the other two, I would absolutely adore them to do, and you got to stick with me on this, because you'll be like, well, hang on a minute, what? I want them to make the Poseidon, and Industrial Park levels. And you sit there and go, well, hang on a minute, the Poseidon and Industrial Park are levels. No, they're boss fight arenas. I want them to be made into fully fledged levels. I want to be able to explore the Poseidon grounds, and I want to be able to go through the chaos of Industrial Park. Industrial Park would probably be a very late level, because the entire point of it is that it's like a torture ground. It's a part that that sadists go to, and that's about it. So I can imagine they'd have to make it a late game area and make it very obstacle heavy, like less enemies, more just general obstacles like saw blades and things trying to make you fall into goo and just things like that. Whilst the Poseidon, I can be the opposite and be very enemy heavy, because that was actually one thing that Maybe it's just because I like being challenged in, even if it's kind of in numbers game way. I'd like a lot of the movie game where when they wanted to be extra challenging, they would just put you in a room with fucking hundreds of enemies, or at least it felt like it. I genuinely didn't mind that. I know some people felt like it was just inflated difficulty, and I completely understand that criticism, but it never bugged me. And so I wouldn't mind a Poseidon, with the nature of the beast being it's the Poseidon, being the one level that has kind of inflated enemies. Oh, did I actually get it? No, it knocked me off, never mind. If you're like really on the ball with that, you can get it to ride you all the way up, but oh well. But then like beyond that, like, I'd have to think about it. Because I think realistically, a couple levels would have to return, but just explored in new ways. But in that I've mentioned before, like, at least I think I've mentioned it before, probably in another Let's Play, so I always talk about Battle for Bikini Bottom. At least in the older days I used to talk about it a lot. Like, I'd love for them to necessarily revisit a level, but do something new with it. Like, use like some of it's old, but then there's like a section that breaks off the beaten path that you didn't know was there, or like, was it available in the original, that takes you to somewhere completely new. So it's kind of old but kind of new. Like, there's still something fresh about it. But once you set up everything we've just done there, it opens this gate to allow to this last proper section, and this is where most kids get stuck because they don't know what to do with this last stone tiki. What you need to do is that because the button's been hit and everything else is in place, there is a leaf slightly to the side over here that's pretty hidden away in the original. Like, when I was a kid, I didn't notice it straight away. It took me a while, but it's pretty hidden away in there. And if you can just ride it up the rest of the way, run to the very edge of this and throw it over, because there is a stone tiki there, a stone tiki pedestal that we need to drop it on. There we go. Other than that, one other area that I kind of want them to explore, but I can't even remotely imagine how they would handle it because there's nothing to it, is the fucking minefield. There's a minefield around the entire outskirts of Bikini Bottom. And if you've watched enough of the show, even though they never talk about it, it's always there. Anytime a character falls off a cliff or falls down over something outside of the city and not on the road, they just blow up. Because there's a giant minefield around the city. It's a little bit of subtle social commentary. It's the same with the buildings in downtown. All of them look like things that have been abandoned from the real world and thrown down. It's subtle social commentary. And the movie was the least subtle about it. If you remember, before they met the frogfish, the one that tried to offer them ice cream, they had to go through a giant junkyard of just abandoned scrap metal. Like, that was what I mean. They've always kind of mentioned about that, like the damage to the sea we're doing, and the minefield is just part of the joke of how they did it. I wouldn't want them to go and explore movie areas though. I feel like some of the movies should remain self-contained. Like, there are a couple areas I'd love to see them re-explore. Like I mentioned before, like earlier today, or on a previous part more likely, that I would love to see something to do with Planktopolis. Then I always wish that Planktopolis was instead left for a sequel and used to kind of break your expectations in a sequel, but instead of the final hurdle taking you to a final boss, it takes you off to what you think is the final boss, and then when you come back, Plankton's taken over, and then you have this new final level that's completely linear, because at that point you've already done the last thing, so it should be linear. But you've already unlocked the last door, sort of thing, and go from there, make it a super challenging final level. I think it would have been perfect if a sequel ended on something like Planktopolis. And it's kind of the reason why I hope the PS5 has complete backwards compatibility, because I'll be able to hopefully more easily defend my point if they do it, because I would cover the movie game. Also, now you've got all the crystals, we can find out what Barnacle Boy's special power was.
I gained the power to trim my nose hairs at super speed.
Incredible.
Yeah, I guess so. Well then, I need to return to the Murmalair and get back to work. But here, take this golden spatula.
There's a little bit of interesting shower thought almost. When like characters or actors and ah a lot and it stays in the script, I always wonder if it was actually scripted or if it's just them talking and they kept it. Because Barnacle Boy and ahs a lot in this game, when he doesn't that much in the show. And I always kind of got the impression that they only did like 1 or 2 takes originally. And they just kind of kept, like, there, it's in the script, like, hey kid. But when he was talking about the trim hair, he was and ah a lot. Like, I know it's something that really doesn't matter, but it's the little things I like to think about, especially when it's games I enjoy. Like, I wonder what happened to the voice cast. It's unfortunate we can't ask the actors, because I said Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, both of them have unfortunately passed away. As heartbreaking as that is to me. Which it is, like, as much as I obviously don't know them personally, the same way I don't know Steven Hillenburg, SpongeBob was such a critical part of my childhood, being born in the late 90s. And so I literally grew up with SpongeBob. That now I'm like 21 and all these faces are growing old or passing away. Like Steven Hillenburg's gone, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy are gone.
Hi,
Like,
Mermaid Man. What are you doing here?
I don't know, like it feels like it's the end of an era. Like it feels like SpongeBob well and truly is starting to fade away because they're not going to replace the voices, at least like they better not. And things like the shitty spin-off show that Nickelodeon's doing behind Steven Hillenburg's grave rubs me the wrong way anyway, because he never wanted spin-offs. He wanted SpongeBob to stand proud on its own, which it did for, you know, 20 odd years. And now as soon as he's passed away, Nickelodeon's like, we're doing a spin-off aimed for like really young children called like Camp Coral, I think it's called, or like Camp Kelp or something like that. Anyway, I'm going to drop that because we got the Kelp slide.
Not to fall off.
The Kelp slide has been made both easier and harder in Rehydrated. Easier because the way SpongeBob reacts to the environments around him, he's a lot sharper on his turns than he used to be, and you can alter his positioning a lot better than he used to be. Harder because the kelp vines around you are far denser than they ever used to be, making it straight up difficult to see sometimes where you're actually going. So things become far easier to just miss and be like, out of sight, out of mind. And some of the positioning of the platforms feel a little weird compared to the original, but I can't put my finger on it. I don't know, maybe like someone who's more experienced, like someone who's got both of them set up side by side can run through them and tell me if how I'm feeling is legit or not. But something just always felt a little off about here. This jump coming around this corner is always sucked. Like in both versions it sucks, but it just feels kind of off in this one. But you need to hit it because there's a sock for your trouble. Putting us up to 70, meaning there's only 10 left. Which, when you keep in mind, there's 2 left in Jellyfish Fields that we need to go back for. One that has the bubble bowl, the other we're needing the cruise bubble. 5 in the dream and 3 in the graveyard. That's it. Also, the third act doesn't have as many socks as the other acts. Like, I always find it kind of weird that Jellyfish Field has like 14, and you go to the other end of the game and the graveyard has 3. Like, it feels like it wasn't balanced out as well as it should have been. Which I know it wasn't going to be perfect because there's 10 zones that socks can appear in, because, you know, you got the hub world and then 9 levels. And there's 80 socks. So what is that, 8 per level? 8 per zone? Some levels it wouldn't work naturally because of the way they're structured anyway. But at the same time, it still feels like more of an effort should have been made.
I guess you could say I had that course licked.
Yes, I owe you a reward.
Now, the only thing left to do is talk to Mrs. Puff now that all the campers have been found to get the last bachelor, and then we're done with Kelp Forest. Probably the biggest level in the game? I say that with a question mark because I'm not actually certain. I haven't really been paying attention to how long each level's taken. And I am also aware that, like, because I've been recording all of this in the course of a day, I am tiring a little bit now because I'm doing a full playthrough. It's not like when I was like 8 or 9 years old where I could literally play a game for 14 hours straight and not remotely tire out. I'm 21 and I feel like I'm 50 sometimes. I can imagine anyone who's in their 20s says that. Which is always a thing for me, because you I started this YouTube when I was 16, and I'm now 21. I've been doing this for 5 years. Well, it'll be 5 years officially in September, I believe. Whenever I started Devil May Cry 4, I'd have to double check. I think it was September I started DMC 4. And I kind of want to do something to talk about that as and when, because, you know, 5 years of Let's Playing, that's a milestone, and I feel like it should be talked about, but I just don't know what I'm going to do yet. I'll work it out when I get to it. Hopefully I will work it out by the time I get to it. I don't particularly want to watch, like, originally I was kind of thinking about doing some of my older, like, re-watching some of my older videos and just talking about it, but I don't like some of my older Let's Plays. I've talked about it before, like, the first 7, I'm very hit and miss with them. Anyway, there's 2 socks in Jellyfish Fields that we need to go back for, and a spatula in downtown we need to go back for. Kind of annoyingly, I get it, but it's still kind of annoying. in the original, you just had to hit the front one, and it just broke all of them automatically. Whilst in this, you have to actually break into each individual pin, so it takes a little longer to get the sock. The other one is back at the Canyon of Mesas. About halfway up, there is a button. Just around here, if you make a left turn, avoid our gooey friend, ow, shooting a tartar at us. On this button over here, it will spawn 5 floaty tikis the whole time you're on it. You need to break them with the cruise bubble. Breaking all 5 will make the sock appear. Which is something, if they do a sequel, I want them to do more often. Justifiably, of course. If it feels like they just want us to go back because they say so, it can be a little annoying. But the fact that only the first 2 levels of the game require you to go back in any sense of the word, it feels like they make me wonder why they kind of bothered. It's like the first level has 2 socks and the second level has a spatula, and then after that, that's it. You never have to go back again. Anyway, back at the Sea Needle, we already opened the button by using Sandy to kind of jump across everything way back when. So if you go through the south door and use the cruise bubble out of it, there's a switch to your immediate right. Alright, whilst I got a few seconds whilst we go around, I never did actually go back on my point to talk about my criticisms with the cruise bubble. They've made it a lot weightier in Rehydrated, making it harder to control. And so you might have noticed back in the Kelp Caves, I was missing some of my shots, because the way it's weighty, if you go to turn it and then try and stabilize it, sometimes it will oversteer, making it just annoying. And that's pretty much the end of that criticism. I just feel like it's a bit too heavy. But after this spatula, I'm going to call it a part, because this one's probably the longest part of the project. So next time on Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, now we have over 60 spatulas, we can access the 8th proper level of the game, the Flying Dutchman's Graveyard. But until then, you guys take care now.